Daniel Carter sat at his desk, staring intently at the old shortwave radio in front of him. The room was dimly lit, with only a small lamp casting a warm yellow glow over the cluttered surface. Papers, notebooks, and tools were scattered everywhere, evidence of years spent tinkering with electronics and listening to the stars. Daniel had always been fascinated by the idea of finding something beyond Earth, something that could prove humans weren't alone in the universe. It was late at night, and the house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen down the hall. His wife, Laura, walked in carrying a steaming cup of coffee. She set it gently on the edge of the desk, careful not to disturb any of the delicate equipment. "You need to take a break," she said softly, her voice tinged with concern. "It's almost midnight." "I'm fine," Daniel replied without looking up. His eyes were glued to the dials on the radio as he adjusted them slowly, searching for frequencies that might hold some hidden secret. Over the years, he'd become an expert at this kind of work. As a retired electrical engineer, he knew how to tweak even the oldest radios to pick up signals from faraway places, or so he hoped. Laura sighed, but didn't push him. She glanced at the clock on the wall. Its glowing green numbers read 11:47 p.m. She lingered for a moment longer, watching her husband fiddle with the knobs before turning to leave. Before she reached the doorway, however, the static on the radio suddenly changed. A sharp burst of sound cut through the noise, followed by silence. Daniel froze, his hand hovering over the dial. Then came a voice, clear, calm, and strangely mechanical. It wasn't human, yet it spoke perfect English. "We are watchers," the voice said. There was a pause, just long enough to make the listener uneasy. "You have been chosen." Daniel's heart raced. He leaned closer to the speaker, straining to hear every word. The message repeated itself after a few moments of eerie silence. "We are watchers. You have been chosen." Each time it played, the tone remained steady and emotionless, like a recording made by beings who didn't understand human feelings, or simply didn't care about them. For a moment, Daniel thought he might be dreaming. He blinked hard and shook his head, trying to clear his mind. But when he looked back at the radio, the voice was still there, speaking those same chilling words over and over again. Without hesitation, he grabbed a nearby recorder and pressed the button to capture the transmission. Whatever this was, it wasn't something he wanted to forget. Once the recording was secure, Daniel called out to Laura. "Come here. You need to hear this." His voice trembled with excitement and disbelief. When she entered the room, he replayed the message for her. Her face went pale as she listened, gripping the door frame tightly. "What? What is that?" she stammered, her wide eyes darting between Daniel and the radio. "I don't know," he admitted, though his mind was already racing with possibilities. Alien contact? Government experiment? Some elaborate prank? None of the explanations felt quite right. What struck him most was the tone of the voice. It wasn't threatening, but it carried an unsettling sense of authority, as if the speaker viewed humanity as insignificant insects beneath their notice. Word of the mysterious broadcast spread quickly once Daniel uploaded the audio file online. He posted it to forums dedicated to amateur astronomy and conspiracy theories, hoping someone else might have heard the same thing. Within hours, the internet exploded with reactions. People from all over the world chimed in, sharing their thoughts and fears. Some dismissed the message as a hoax, pointing out that anyone with basic audio software could fake such a recording. Others argued passionately that this was real proof of extraterrestrial life. As the debate raged on, governments around the globe remained eerily silent. No official statements were issued, no explanations offered. This lack of transparency only fueled public paranoia. Protesters took to the streets, demanding answers. Conspiracy theorists claimed the signal was part of a secret government project, or a warning from aliens preparing to invade. Social media platforms buzzed with hashtags like "Dieting the Watchers" and "Dieting Chosen by Aliens," while news outlets struggled to keep up with the rapidly evolving story. At home, Daniel found himself caught in the middle of the storm. Reporters began showing up at his doorstep, eager to interview the man who had first shared the recording. Strangers sent him emails and messages, some thanking him for exposing the truth, others accusing him of fabricating the whole thing. Laura grew increasingly worried as the attention intensified. She urged Daniel to step away from the chaos, reminding him that they were just ordinary people caught up in something much bigger than themselves. But Daniel couldn't let go. The more he thought about the message, the more convinced he became that it was genuine. Something about the precision of the language, the mathematical rhythm of the pauses, hinted at intelligence far beyond anything humans could produce. And then there was the phrase itself, "You have been chosen." Chosen for what? To receive knowledge? To face judgment? To prepare for war? One evening, as Daniel sat at his desk reviewing the recording for what felt like the 100th time, Laura stood behind him, resting her hands on his shoulders. "This isn't healthy," she said quietly. "You're obsessing over something you can't control." "I have to figure this out," Daniel replied, his voice firm despite the fatigue etched into his face. "If I don't, who will?" Laura didn't respond. Instead, she kissed the top of his head and left the room, leaving Daniel alone with his thoughts and the haunting echo of the alien voice. Unbeknownst to either of them, the broadcast had set off a chain reaction that would soon spiral out of control. Across continents, scientists, politicians, and ordinary citizens grappled with the implications of the message. Some saw it as an opportunity, a chance to unlock the mysteries of the universe. Others viewed it as a threat, a harbinger of doom. And somewhere in the shadows, powerful forces moved silently, preparing for whatever came next. For now, though, Daniel remained focused on the signal. Every click of the dial, every adjustment of the frequency, brought him closer to understanding, or so he believed. Little did he know the true impact of the broadcast was only beginning to unfold. Across the country, Emily Dawson sat at her cluttered desk in a small, dimly lit office. She worked for an independent news outlet that barely had enough funding to keep its doors open. But Emily didn't care about the paycheck. What drove her was the thrill of uncovering stories others missed. The kind of stories that made people sit up and pay attention. Her fingers flew over the keyboard as she typed furiously, trying to piece together everything she could find about the mysterious broadcast Daniel Carter had shared. Emily had always been curious, ever since she was a child growing up in a tiny town where nothing exciting ever happened. Now, as a journalist, she lived for moments like this, when something extraordinary broke through the monotony of daily life. The alien message wasn't just extraordinary, it was earth-shattering. But as she dug deeper, she began to realize there was more to the story than anyone knew. Late one night, while sifting through online forums and government websites, Emily stumbled upon something strange. A whistleblower had leaked classified documents onto the dark web, claiming they revealed decades of secret communications between Earth and unknown entities. At first, Emily thought it might be another conspiracy theory, but the documents looked legitimate. They contained detailed transcripts of earlier broadcasts, all eerily similar to the one Daniel had recorded. Each message grew more complex, more urgent, until finally, the most recent transmission mirrored the words everyone now knew. "We are watchers. You have been chosen." What shocked Emily even more were the images embedded in the files. Binary code translated into diagrams of massive machines, intricate blueprints that seemed to defy human engineering. Mathematical equations accompanied the designs, formulas so advanced they left Emily's head spinning. And then there were maps marking specific locations across the globe. Some pointed to remote deserts, others to dense forests, and a few even highlighted major cities. Her heart raced as she pieced it all together. These weren't random messages, they were instructions. Whoever, or whatever, was sending them wanted humanity to build something. But what? And why? Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the answers lay somewhere between salvation and destruction. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Emily decided to reach out to Daniel. After reading his posts online and watching interviews he'd given, She believed he was trustworthy and desperate enough to help her. She sent him an email explaining who she was and what she had discovered, attaching copies of the leaked documents. To her surprise, he responded within hours. "I've been wondering if there was more to it," Daniel wrote back. "This changes everything." They agreed to meet in person. Emily drove to Daniel's house the next day, arriving just as the sun dipped below the horizon. Laura greeted her at the door with a wary smile, clearly uneasy about the constant stream of strangers showing up at their home. Daniel led Emily to his study, where the two of them pored over the documents for hours. Together they analyzed every detail, searching for clues. "The machines, they're designed to harness energy," Daniel said after a long silence. He pointed to one of the diagrams, his finger tracing the outline of a towering structure, but on a scale we've never seen before. "If these things work, they could power entire continents or destroy them." Emily nodded, her stomach churning at the implications. "Do you think governments know about this?" she asked. "Maybe they've already started building." Daniel hesitated. "If they have, they're keeping it quiet, which means we might not like what happens next." As the days passed, public reaction to the broadcast intensified. Protests erupted in cities around the world. People demanded answers from their leaders, accusing them of hiding the truth. Conspiracy theories flourished online, ranging from claims that the aliens intended to uplift humanity to fears of an imminent invasion. Social media buzzed with hashtags like "on Build or Burn" and "alien blueprints," reflecting the growing divide in opinions. In the midst of the chaos, a shadowy group calling themselves the Guardians emerged. Their members wore black masks and posted videos online warning humanity against decoding the messages. "We are not ready," one masked figure declared in a viral clip. "To build these machines is to invite catastrophe." Their rhetoric resonated with many, sparking debates about whether humanity should embrace or reject the alien instructions. Meanwhile, tensions mounted between nations. China and Russia announced plans to construct the machines based on the alien designs, arguing that compliance might ensure survival. In contrast, the United States called for a moratorium on any such projects until international consensus could be reached. Smaller countries aligned themselves accordingly, deepening geopolitical rifts. The United Nations convened emergency meetings, but progress stalled as leaders clashed over how to proceed. Back at Daniel's house, Laura watched helplessly as her husband became increasingly consumed by the mystery. Strangers continued to show up unannounced, seeking guidance or simply wanting to see the man behind the viral recording. Some brought gifts, others brought threats. One evening, a man pounded on the front door, shouting accusations about Daniel being part of a global conspiracy. Laura answered, her voice trembling but firm. "Leave us alone," she said, shutting the door firmly in his face. That night, as Daniel and Emily worked late into the evening, Laura stood in the doorway of the study, arms crossed. "This has gone too far," she said, her tone sharp. "You're putting yourselves and everyone else in danger." "We don't have a choice," Daniel replied, though guilt flickered in his eyes. "If we don't figure this out, someone else will, and we might not like what they do with it." Laura didn't argue further. Instead, she retreated to the kitchen, where she poured herself a glass of water and stared out the window at the darkened street. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of a precipice, teetering dangerously close to disaster. Unbeknownst to them, powerful forces were already at work. Corporate giants eager to capitalize on the alien technology began covert operations to build the machines without oversight. Helix Industries, a multinational conglomerate known for its controversial projects, set up a secret facility in the middle of a barren desert. Workers arrived under cover of darkness, transported in unmarked vans. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, ensuring no one got too close. Emily uncovered evidence of the operation during her investigation. Satellite images showed rows of massive structures rising from the sand, humming with barely contained energy. Determined to expose the truth, she convinced Daniel to join her on a trip to the site. Though reluctant, he agreed, knowing they might be the only ones willing to risk everything to uncover what was really happening. Before leaving, Daniel hugged Laura tightly. "I'll be careful," he promised, though neither of them truly believed it. The journey to the desert was long and grueling. The landscape grew increasingly desolate as they approached the facility, the road narrowing to little more than a dirt path. When they finally arrived, the sight took their breath away. Towering machines loomed against the horizon, their metallic surfaces glinting in the sunlight. Workers moved like shadows, their faces obscured by masks. Guards stationed at the gates eyed them suspiciously. "This is insane," Emily whispered, snapping photos from the safety of their car. "If they catch us—" "They won't," Daniel interrupted, though his voice lacked conviction. He adjusted the camera lens, zooming in on the structures. As he did, he noticed something odd, a series of numbers etched into the side of one machine. They matched coordinates he'd jotted down in his notebook weeks earlier, numbers hidden within. The binary code of the alien message. Suddenly, alarms blared, shattering the silence. Guards rushed toward their vehicle, weapons drawn. Panicked, Daniel and Emily scrambled out of the car and bolted into the maze-like interior of the facility. Heart pounding, they ducked behind crates and machinery, trying to evade capture. But the guards were relentless, closing in from all sides. Cornered in a narrow corridor, Daniel glanced at the partially completed machine looming above them. An idea formed in his mind, wild and reckless. Without hesitation, he pulled out his notebook and entered the coordinates into the machine's control panel. Lights flickered, and a low hum filled the air. Then, a blinding flash engulfed everything. When the light faded, Daniel and Emily were gone. When Daniel opened his eyes, he wasn't sure if he was awake or dreaming. The world around him looked completely different from anything he had ever seen. Towering crystalline spires stretched high into the sky, their surfaces shimmering with colors that shifted like liquid rainbows. The air felt strange, lighter, almost electric, and there was a faint hum in the background, as if the entire place vibrated with energy. Beside him, Emily groaned softly and sat up, rubbing her temples. Her wide eyes scanned the alien landscape, taking in the surreal beauty of it all. "Where are we?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Daniel admitted, standing slowly to steady himself. His legs felt weak, and his head spun slightly, but he forced himself to focus. "But I think this is connected to the message." As they took tentative steps forward, they realized they weren't alone. Other people wandered aimlessly through the strange city, their faces pale and haunted. Some wore tattered clothes, while others were dressed in uniforms or lab coats. They came from all walks of life, scientists, soldiers, activists, ordinary citizens, but they shared one thing in common: confusion. Daniel approached a man who looked like he might have been a soldier once. His boots were scuffed, and his easy jacket bore insignias Daniel didn't recognize. "Do you know where we are?" he asked. The man shook his head, his expression blank. "I was working on the machines. Then I woke up here." He gestured vaguely at the towering structures around them. "We're not supposed to be here." Before Daniel could ask more questions, a figure emerged from the distance. It wasn't human, not entirely. Its form shifted between light and shadow, constantly changing, yet somehow solid. When it spoke, its voice resonated in their minds rather than their ears. "You sought understanding," it said, its tone calm but devoid of emotion. "Yet your actions betrayed ignorance. You built not to create, but to destroy." Emily stepped, back instinctively clutching Daniel's arm. "What does it mean?" she whispered. Daniel stared at the being, his mind racing. He thought about the machines, the instructions, the warnings from the Guardians. Everything clicked into place. "They gave us a test," he murmured. "And we failed." The being nodded, though its movements were fluid and unnatural. "Your species has long demonstrated a capacity for both creation and destruction. We offered tools to elevate you, yet you chose fear over unity, greed over cooperation, power over wisdom. But why bring us here? Emily asked, finding her voice, despite her fear. Why show us this? To witness the consequences of your choices, the being replied. This realm exists outside your time. Here, you will see what becomes of your world. As soon as the words left the being's mouth, the scene around them shifted. The shimmering spires dissolved into darkness, replaced by images projected onto the void. They saw flashes of Earth, cities crumbling, forests burning, oceans rising. People screamed as chaos consumed their lives. Governments collapsed, nations turned against each other, and the machines humanity had built unleashed devastation beyond comprehension. Daniel watched in horror as familiar landmarks disappeared under waves of destruction. New York City drowned beneath rising waters. Beijing vanished in a cloud of smoke. Entire regions were wiped clean, leaving nothing but barren wastelands behind. The beings known as Watchers hadn't come to invade or conquer. They had simply observed, waiting to see how humanity would respond to the challenge. We did this, Daniel breathed, his voice heavy with guilt. We destroyed ourselves. Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Not everyone, not all of us wanted this. There were good people trying to stop it. Intentions matter little when outcomes remain unchanged, the being said. Your species acted without foresight, driven by selfish desires. Now you exist in limbo, a space between existence and oblivion. Back on Earth, Laura Carter stared out the window of her empty house, clutching Daniel's journal tightly to her chest. Days had passed since he disappeared, and no one had any answers. The facility in the desert had been abandoned overnight, its guards vanishing without explanation. Satellite images showed the machine still standing, silent and dormant, as if waiting for something or someone to awaken them again. News reports painted a grim picture. Cities across the globe reported mass disappearances. Entire populations vanished without warning, leaving streets eerily quiet. Governments scrambled to maintain order, but panic spread faster than they could contain it. Social media filled with videos of people pleading for help, claiming loved ones had been taken by some unseen force. Conspiracy theories reached fever pitch, blaming everything from aliens to secret government experiments. Laura flipped through the pages of Daniel's journal, searching for clues. His handwriting was hurried, filled with notes about frequencies, coordinates, and equations. Near the end, she found a single phrase written in shaky letters. Hope remains. She didn't know what it meant, but it gave her something to cling to. Laura refused to believe Daniel was gone forever. Whatever had happened to him, wherever he was, she vowed to find a way to bring him back. In the alien realm, Daniel and Emily continued to wander among the lost souls. Some tried to communicate, sharing fragments of their stories. A scientist confessed he had ignored warnings about the dangers of the machines, believing humanity could control them. A politician admitted she had prioritized personal gain over global stability. Each person carried their own burden of regret, united by the knowledge that they had contributed to the downfall of their species. Despite the despair surrounding them, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that there was still a chance to fix things. He remembered the phrase he had written in his journal before activating the machine. Hope remained. But how? And what could they possibly do from this strange, timeless place? One day, as they walked through the shifting landscape, Emily stopped suddenly. She pointed toward a distant structure, a massive archway glowing faintly with the same iridescent hues as the spires. Do you see that? She asked. Daniel squinted, shielding his eyes from the brightness. It looks like a doorway. Without hesitation, they moved toward it, ignoring the protests of those around them. As they drew closer, the being of light and shadow reappeared, blocking their path. You cannot leave, it said. Your world is lost. We have to try, Daniel insisted, his voice firm despite the fear gripping his heart. If we can warn them, if we can change even one decision, it might make a difference. The being studied them for a long moment, its form flickering like flames caught in a breeze. Finally, it stepped aside. "Very well," it said. "But no. This. The choice is yours alone. If you fail, you will return here and your fate will be sealed." With that, the archway pulsed with light, creating a tunnel that seemed to stretch endlessly into the unknown. Taking a deep breath, Daniel grabbed Emily's hand, and together, they stepped through. On the other side, they found themselves back, in the desert, standing in front of the partially completed machine. Guards lay unconscious on the ground, their weapons scattered nearby. The facility was eerily quiet, as if frozen in time. Daniel glanced at Emily, his expression determined. "We need to shut it down," he said. "All of them, before it's too late." Emily nodded, her resolve matching his. Together they set to work, using Daniel's knowledge of the alien designs to disable the machine. It wasn't easy. The technology was far beyond anything they understood. But they worked quickly, driven by desperation. As they dismantled the final component, a loud crack echoed through the air. The machine shuddered violently, then went silent. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a wave of energy rippled outward, knocking them off their feet. When Daniel opened his eyes again, he was lying on the floor of his study. Laura stood above him, her face pale with shock. "You're back," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. Confused but relieved, Daniel sat up slowly. "How long was I gone?" "Days," Laura replied. "Maybe weeks. I don't know anymore." He glanced around the room, half expecting to see signs of destruction, but everything looked normal. Too normal. Had they succeeded? Or was this just another layer of the Watcher's test? Only time would tell. Daniel sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor as if it might hold answers to the questions swirling in his mind. Laura hovered nearby, watching him with a mix of relief and worry. She had spent days searching for him, calling every contact she could think of, but no one had been able to explain where he'd gone, or why he'd returned so suddenly. Now here he was, back in their home, looking like a man who had seen things beyond comprehension. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, sitting beside him. Her voice broke through his thoughts, pulling him back to the present. "I don't know," Daniel admitted, rubbing his temples. His head throbbed, not from pain but from the weight of everything he'd experienced. The alien city, the lost souls, the beings of light and shadow, it all felt too vivid to be a dream, yet too strange to be real. And then there was Emily. He glanced around the room, half expecting her to appear, but she was nowhere to be found. "What happened out there?" Laura pressed, her tone gentle but firm. "Where did you go?" Daniel hesitated. How could he explain something he barely understood himself? "It's hard to put into words," he began slowly. "But something bigger than us is watching. They gave us a chance, a test, and we failed. The machines weren't meant to destroy, but that's what they became because of our fear and greed." Laura listened silently, her eyes wide with disbelief. When he finished, she shook her head. "And now? Are we safe? Is this over?" "I don't know," Daniel repeated, his voice heavy with uncertainty. "We stopped one machine, but there are others. If they're still active..." He didn't finish the sentence. Neither of them needed to hear the rest. Meanwhile, chaos continued to unfold across the globe. Cities lay eerily silent, their streets empty except for abandoned cars and scattered belongings. Governments struggled to maintain order, but without clear leadership or communication, efforts fell apart quickly. Rumors spread faster than facts, fueling panic among survivors. Some claimed the disappearances were random acts of alien abduction. Others believed it was punishment for humanity's hubris. In the desert, the facility where Daniel and Emily had confronted the machine stood abandoned. Security cameras captured nothing but static after the energy wave rippled outward. Scientists, sent to investigate, reported strange anomalies, equipment malfunctioning, readings spiking erratically, but no definitive evidence of what had caused the event. Whatever had happened inside those walls remained a mystery. Back in Daniel's hometown, life seemed suspended in limbo. Neighbors whispered about the missing, pointing fingers at anyone who appeared suspicious. Stores ran low on supplies as people stockpiled food and water, preparing for the worst. Fear ruled every decision, every conversation. Despite the turmoil, Daniel refused to give up. With Laura's help, he scoured news reports and online forums for signs of progress, or hope. Slowly, stories began to emerge. In remote corners of the world, small groups of scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to dismantle the remaining machines. Inspired by leaked footage of Daniel disabling the desert facility, they risked everything to undo the damage humanity had caused. One such group operated in an underground lab hidden beneath a mountain range in Norway. Led by a young physicist named Mia Jensen, the team consisted of volunteers from various fields: engineers, programmers, even amateur hobbyists united by a shared goal to prevent further catastrophe. Using fragments of information gathered from Daniel's posts and other sources, they pieced together instructions for safely deactivating the alien devices. Mia herself had once dismissed the broadcast as a hoax, but when entire towns near her childhood home vanished overnight, she realized the truth was far darker. Determined to make amends, she dedicated herself to finding solutions. Late one night, as her team worked around the clock, she received a message from an unexpected source, Emily Dawson. The email was brief but urgent. "If you're working on the machine, stop immediately. You need to see this." Attached was a video file showing the alien city Daniel had described: the crystalline spires, the shifting figures, the haunting glow. At first, Mia thought it was fake, but something about the footage felt undeniably real. She forwarded the video to her team, and within hours they reached a unanimous decision. They would halt all operations until they fully understood the implications of their actions. For the first time since the broadcast, humanity paused, not out of fear, but out of caution. While the world grappled with uncertainty, Daniel wrestled with guilt. He couldn't shake the image of the lost souls trapped in the alien realm, replaying their stories in his mind. Each face represented a choice made in ignorance, a moment when humanity had prioritized power over wisdom. Yet amidst the regret, he clung to the phrase he had written in his journal: "Hope remains." One evening, as he flipped through the pages of his notebook, he noticed something he hadn't seen before. Hidden among the scribbles and equations was a faint mark, a symbol etched into the corner of a page. It matched the insignia on the diagrams of the alien machines. Tracing it with his finger, he felt a spark of recognition. This wasn't just a design, it was a message. Laura watched him curiously as he grabbed a pen and began sketching the symbol onto a blank sheet of paper. "What is that?" she asked. "I'm not sure," Daniel replied, his brow furrowed in concentration. "But I think it's important." Over the next few days, he studied the symbol obsessively, comparing it to the blueprints and notes he had collected. Slowly, patterns emerged, connections between the alien language and mathematical principles humanity already understood. What started as a vague idea grew into a theory. The Watchers hadn't abandoned Earth entirely. Their presence lingered, in the designs, waiting for someone to decipher their true meaning. With renewed determination, Daniel reached out to Mia and her team, sharing his findings. Together they worked remotely, exchanging data and theories late into the night. Progress was slow, but each breakthrough brought them closer to understanding the Watchers' intentions. Months passed, and the world began to heal. Crops grew, again in fields once barren, and rivers flowed freely where drought had taken hold. Nature reclaimed its balance, offering a fragile sense of peace. Survivors rebuilt their lives cautiously, wary of repeating past mistakes. Then, one day, a new signal appeared. Unlike the previous broadcast, this one carried no warnings, no cryptic messages. Instead, it played a simple melody, a harmonious blend of tones that resonated deeply with anyone who heard it. People stopped what they were doing, drawn to the sound as if it spoke directly to their souls. Daniel recognized it instantly. It was the same hum he had felt in the alien city, the same vibration that permeated the air around the Watchers. Tears welled in his eyes as he realized what it meant. Forgiveness. The Watchers hadn't given up on humanity. Despite their failures, despite the destruction they had wrought, they offered a second chance. The melody served as a reminder, not of judgment but of potential. Humanity had proven capable of both creation and destruction. Now, it was up to them to choose which path to follow. As the music faded, Daniel turned to Laura, a smile breaking through his exhaustion. "We did it," he said quietly. "Not just me or Emily or Mia, all of us. Together." Laura hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the future held promise. Across the planet, people listened to the melody and felt the same spark of hope. From bustling cities to quiet villages, conversations shifted from fear to possibility. Schools reopened, teaching lessons learned from the crisis. Governments collaborated instead of competing, pooling resources to address global challenges. Even corporations changed their practices, prioritizing sustainability over profit. Though scars remained, humanity began to rebuild, not as individuals, but as a united species. The Watchers' test had been harsh, but it had also revealed strength, buried beneath layers of fear and division. Years later, Daniel often reflected on the journey that had led him here. He kept the journal close, its pages worn from use. On the final page, he added a new entry. "We chose hope, and in doing so, we chose life." Far away, in the depths of space, the Watchers observed silently. Their task was done, for now. Humanity had proven itself worthy of another chance. Whether they would rise to meet the challenges ahead remained to be seen. But for the first time in centuries, the Watchers' gaze softened. Perhaps, they thought, this fragile species was finally ready to join the stars. Years had passed since the world first heard the alien broadcast, but its effects lingered like ripples on a still pond. The melody that followed, the harmonious tones sent by the Watchers, had become a symbol of renewal. It played in classrooms, during public gatherings, and even as background music in quiet cafes. People listened to it not just for comfort, but as a reminder of how close they had come to losing everything. Daniel Carter lived a quieter life now. He no longer spent his nights hunched over radios or poring over cryptic diagrams. Instead, he devoted his time to teaching. His classes weren't about electrical engineering or astronomy. They focused on lessons learned from the crisis. "We almost destroyed ourselves," he would tell his students, his voice steady, but filled with emotion. "But we didn't, and that's what matters." Laura often sat in the back of the room during these lectures, watching her husband with pride. She remembered the days when Daniel seemed consumed by the mystery of the broadcast, when fear and obsession clouded his judgment. Now, he radiated calmness, as if the weight of the universe no longer rested solely on his shoulders. The change in him was remarkable and inspiring. But while most people embraced the newfound sense of unity, others struggled to move forward. Emily Dawson, for instance, vanished shortly after returning from the alien realm. No one knew where she went, or why. Some speculated she couldn't handle the memories of what she'd seen, while others believed she continued working behind the scenes to ensure humanity stayed on the right path. Her name occasionally surfaced in online forums, tied to unverified reports of dismantled machines or secret meetings between scientists. But without proof, she became more myth than person, a ghost haunting the edges of history. In Norway, Mia Jensen and her team remained active, though their focus shifted. They no longer worked to deactivate alien devices. Instead, they studied them, searching for ways to adapt the technology for peaceful purposes. Their breakthroughs were modest but promising: energy-efficient power grids, advanced medical equipment, and sustainable farming tools. Each innovation served as a testament to humanity's ability to learn from its mistakes. Yet, despite the progress, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Not everyone trusted the Watchers, or the governments tasked with overseeing their technology. A faction known as the Unbound emerged, advocating for complete rejection of alien influence. Their leader, a fiery woman named Rachel Monroe, argued that relying on extraterrestrial knowledge made humanity weak. "If we depend on them, we'll never grow stronger," she declared at rallies packed with supporters. "We must find our own way." Her words resonated with many, especially those who felt left behind by the rapid changes sweeping the globe. Protests erupted outside research facilities, with protesters chanting slogans like, "No more machines" and "Earth first." Violence flared occasionally, forcing authorities to intervene. The divide between those who embraced the Watchers' gifts and those who rejected them grew wider with each passing day. Meanwhile, Daniel wrestled with doubts of his own. Though he publicly supported the cautious integration of alien technology, privately, he questioned whether humanity truly deserved a second chance. Memories of the lost souls in the alien city haunted him. He often wondered if the Watchers were testing them again, waiting to see how they handled this new phase of coexistence. One evening, as he walked home from class, Laura brought up the topic. "Do you think we're ready?" she asked, linking her arm through his. "I don't know," Daniel admitted. "We've made progress, sure, but progress doesn't mean perfection." Laura nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe that's okay. Maybe they don't expect us to be perfect. Maybe they just want us to try." Her words stayed with him long after they reached home. That night, unable to sleep, he pulled out his old journal and flipped through its worn pages. The symbol he had discovered years ago caught his eye once more. Something about it still felt unfinished, as if it held secrets yet to be uncovered. Determined to explore further, Daniel contacted Mia and her team. Together, they analyzed the symbol using advanced algorithms designed to decode complex patterns. What they found astonished them. Embedded within the design was a set of coordinates pointing to a remote location deep in the Pacific Ocean. Excited but wary, Daniel proposed an expedition. "This could be another message," he said during a video call with Mia. "Or maybe closure." Mia agreed, though she urged caution. "We don't know what we're dealing with," she reminded him. "Whatever's down there might not be friendly." With funding from international organizations, the team assembled a crew and set sail aboard a state-of-the-art research vessel. The journey took days, the ship cutting through endless waves under a vast, starry sky. When they finally arrived, at the coordinates, sonar scans revealed a massive structure resting on the ocean floor. Using remotely operated vehicles equipped with cameras, they explored the site. The structure resembled the machines described in the alien blueprints, but unlike anything they'd encountered before, it appeared dormant, covered in coral and seaweed. As the ROVs approached, however, faint lights began to pulse along its surface. Back on the ship, tension mounted. Was this a trap, a test, or simply a relic left behind by the Watchers? Daniel watched the live feed intently, his heart pounding. When the camera zoomed in on a panel etched with familiar symbols, he gasped. It was the same insignia he had sketched in his journal. "Activate it," he instructed the team, his voice trembling with anticipation. "No." Rachel Monroe's voice crackled over a radio transmission. Somehow she had tracked the expedition and was broadcasting her objections live. "You're playing with forces you don't understand." Ignoring her protests, the team proceeded. With a series of precise commands, they triggered the mechanism. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a beam of light shot upward, piercing the water's surface and illuminating the night sky. The ship's crew shielded their eyes as the light intensified, forming a swirling vortex overhead. From within the vortex emerged a being, not of shadow and light, but of pure energy. Its presence filled the air with warmth, and its voice resonated in everyone's minds. "You have chosen wisely," it said. "Your actions prove your willingness to grow. But remember, true strength lies not in technology but in unity." Before anyone could respond, the vortex collapsed, leaving only the gentle lapping of waves against the hull. The structure below sank deeper into the ocean, disappearing from view. On board, silence reigned. No one spoke for several minutes, each person processing what they had witnessed. Finally, Daniel broke the quiet. "They're giving us a clean slate," he said softly. "A chance to start fresh." Word of the event spread quickly, reigniting debates about humanity's relationship with the Watchers. While some celebrated the apparent approval from the beings, others, like Rachel Monroe, saw it as confirmation of their dependence on alien intervention. Protests intensified, and clashes between factions threatened to undo the fragile peace. Yet, amid the turmoil, small acts of kindness and cooperation began to emerge. Communities came together to rebuild damaged infrastructure. Scientists shared discoveries openly, prioritizing collective progress over personal acclaim. Even Rachel's followers softened slightly, acknowledging that rejecting all forms of help wasn't realistic. As months turned into years, humanity continued to evolve. The Watchers' influence remained subtle, guiding rather than dictating. Their message was clear. The future belonged to Earth's inhabitants, not to distant observers. For Daniel, the journey had come full circle. He stood on a hill overlooking his hometown one evening, the melody of the Watchers playing softly in his ears. Beside him, Laura smiled, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "We did it," she whispered. "Not perfectly, but we did it." Daniel nodded, gazing at the horizon. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, the Watchers watched and waited. Whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity would face them together.